Welcome to Hot to Trot. This is not your normal horse racing podcast. I'm Ashley Eisenbiel.
And I'm Meadow Twaddle, and we're your hosts for Hot to Trot.
Thanks everybody for joining us on another episode of Hot to Trot. And we are so excited to have you here for a wonderful interview today. But before we get to that, we want to talk a little bit about that fair harness racing, because it is end of July, beginning of August, and we are ramping up in the fair harness racing season.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I have not really spent a lot of time at the fairs, but August 10th and 11th, there's a fair right in my backyard, Washington County Fair, and August 10th is actually my birthday. So there's a good chance I could be heading out to the fair for my birthday. And that's just another excuse to load up on all the fair food because it's my birthday and I can treat myself to all the deep fried, whatever dipped in chocolate I want.
Exactly. Well, I'm an August baby too. I'm August 24th. And I usually spend my birthday at a racetrack too. Usually it's Sun Stakes, which we do have coming up as well. But nothing beats the fair food. Did you go to your fair, your local fair in high school and stuff?
Oh yeah, I loved the fair. I'm trying to think. The deep fried Oreos was always a hit. I love
a funnel cake.
Oh, I know. You could dress it up with so many things too. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to head out to the fair. Which ones have you gone to or planning to go to? You have a lot closer to you than I do.
Well, we used to have the York Fair, which is where I am, but we don't have that anymore, which is really sad. And it used to always be on my son's birthday, July 5th, around there. So he spent a lot of birthdays at the York Fair. But no, I'm going to go out. I always go out to Gratz, which is going to be September 6th and 7th. And I love the Bloomsburg Fair, but that's also later in September, always the same week as Parks's PA Derby. And now we have PA Day at the races. And now we also have the Masters that weekend. So I don't know if I'll be able to make it out to Bloomsburg this year, which would make me really sad. But I'm definitely going to Gratz. I have another one that I want to go to this week. So it will be after this airs. But yeah, I'm excited. It is going to be a lot of fun. I love going to the fairs. That's what really got me involved in racing and harness racing when I came to PA when I worked for the commission. Was going out to those fairs, and the Johnson brothers and Gary Johnson, trainer out the Meadows, he took me underneath his wing, and Sam Beagle, all of those guys, they all helped me so much understand harness racing, because I had never really, I had gone to Rosecroft in Maryland and stuff, but I never actually really threw myself into harness racing until I started working in PA. So having those guys teach me about the pacers and the trotters and times and everything was really cool, and that made me fall in love with it. I love the fans, and I also love the community that we have here in PA with harness racing with the fairs.
And then we get to go celebrate a fun and eventful fair season in Bedford in January at the fair banquet. That's always a good time. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
always.
A busy summer with fairs and racing, but our next big event is August 16th at Pocono Downs. We have Sun Stakes. Last year, Ashley was not there. She was on vacation, and she missed a very gloomy, rainy, windy day at Pocono Downs. But hopefully this year it lives up to its name, and we have some sun and some good weather. So that's the next big event on the radar. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yes, I will plan on bringing the sun. I will be there this year, so the sun will come. It always does when I'm there.
Well,
I just jinxed it. I totally jinxed it.
Maybe, but we'll see.
Probably.
Well, let's talk a little bit about our guest today. He might just be the busiest man in horse racing. I swear, every time I check social media, he's at a different track or traveling somewhere else. But he wears so many hats. You can find him in the announcer's booth, at the betting windows. He's kind of just done it all. Gabe Prewitt, the one and only. And it was such a pleasure talking to him. He's so insightful, and I learned a lot listening to him today.
He brings such an enthusiasm to the betting part of our industry. And of course, I love that. So I love getting his insight. He is just so good and like so knowledgeable when it comes to horse players and wagering menus and strategic betting. So I always love to soak in all the knowledge when we have Gabe around, especially when we got to spend time with him at Adios. So he's just a rock star in the industry, and it was a great interview, and we hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, here is our interview with Gabe Prewitt. Thank you, Gabe, so much for joining us here on Hot to Trot. We're so excited to get to know you a little bit better and get some more insight on wagering and also calling those races. But first, let's tell the fans a little bit about how you actually got started in horse racing that might not know you.
Well, horse racing in general, I grew up just outside of Lexington in Kentucky, so it's hard not to be immersed in the horse racing business. Grew up, my father had a couple of horses, mares, and small-time breeder, I guess you could say, very small time, about as small as you can get. Grew up going to Keeneland, the thoroughbreds, and really enjoyed just the atmosphere. As you guys know, everything that comes with the track, and, as a kid, happened to miss a few school days every now and then when Keeneland was in session in the spring and fall. Went to college at the University of Kentucky, close to home, and just by sheer good or bad luck, depends on your perspective, I suppose, I moved right across from the Red Mile, not knowing what the Red Mile was, by the way. And somewhere along the way there, right across from the stable gate, we were not there very long, as it turns out. I'm going to say a couple weeks till a buddy rolled in my place and said, "Hey, do you want to go bet the horses at Red Mile?" And I said, they race horses there? He said, "Yeah, it's just like Keeneland." He said, they got the carts behind them, but you can still bet just like we do out there. And I said, "Well, that sounds cool. Let's go." So went shortly. I guess I was 18, rolled in, never seen a harness race in my life. And it was a new adventure and really got, really took to it and enjoyed that. And with the close proximity, it turns out I could walk over to the track anytime I wanted. So that's sort of how I was introduced to harness racing.
And you've worn so many hats. You've been announcer, director of wagering, GM, VP, you name it, you've been it. What's your current role right now?
Right now, they humor me with the title of vice president, general manager of racing at Hoosier Park. So it's still going to do some announcing at Red Mile. So I think, a lot of those titles, different things. I was the director of the Horsemen's Association in Kentucky for a decade. So that was sort of a unique and cool experience. You let me see a lot of the other side of it. I've, owned and bred, very small amount of horses over the years too. So I think getting a different perspective, I obviously started off as a fan and gambler, but getting a different perspective in a lot of different roles has helped. I think, more on the management side, it may have started out as my degree was in business management from the University of Kentucky, but it started out as a little bit of a desperation thing because, I stepped into that role of Pompano, and I think, at some point I just became the last guy in the room. And they said, "Hey, why don't you take care of this for us?" So that was sort of my introductory role into the management side. But, it's been fun. I enjoy just being at the track. So it really, in any capacity, and just fortunate to get to do so on a daily basis.
Is there a role that surprised you the most?
I would say it's been a learning experience with everything. I do think stepping into like a more of a track management role, we've got there are a lot of things that are behind the curtain, so to speak, that you just, can only do so much, that you can only control so much. It's very easy for those of us, which I was one before, so I can explain this very easy. But, those of us that, are on social media or whatnot, and, we have all these brilliant ideas that why are these idiots doing this or that? It turns out it can be a little trickier. When you get behind the scenes, there are just so many moving parts that go into putting on this production, whether it's with the companies that are intertwined behind the scenes or different horsemen's groups, different, regulatory groups. So, I think getting behind the curtain opened my eyes up to a lot of things that, I probably didn't to take notice of prior to that.
Well, let's talk betting, my favorite topic.
Mine too.
So you've built such a loyal following with the Senate and Army. Tell us how you think you connect now with the bettors more than, calling the races and then as an announcer.
Well, I think, we were very fortunate. At Pompano, it was a unique place. And was sort of by any means necessary. At some point in time, they sort of just let us do our own thing. Social media became a big part of that. We were really off the radar, I think, from everyone. I mean, when we were down there the first couple of years, I remember going back to 2013 now, when I got to Pompano. I mean, there were nights where we would bet 60, 70 grand for an entire night. Seems impossible to do that anywhere. But well, we pulled it off somehow, even during the winter, when there's less competition. And so we were attracted to really fighting for exposure, and whether it be, different avenues, whether it was social media. Ultimately, after a couple of seasons, we started to get some TVG airtime, which I think helped us out just because, a lot different than a lot of other places. We just didn't really have that following or that the foundation to try and build things on. So social media was free. It turns out my employers were a big fan of free, so at any type of advertising promotion. So it really tried to use that as a unique base. When I first got there, I think I was even new to Twitter, but we would get literally no reactions to almost anything I would send out because no one was watching for the most part. Over time, that just grew. We tried to continue to grow in brand. We changed up the betting menu, lowered some takeouts, tried to do some things to garner attention. That was the big thing. We wanted to, be unique, be different than everyone else. We looked at everything as far as what nights we raced, maybe to get a little more exposure and attention. And we were at a good time slot. The winter is much better, advantageous than the summer when it comes to, the simulcast market, obviously. And with the weather, we had that good fortune in South Florida as well. But I think that, that was just a random one-off tweet one night where I tweeted about a carryover and used the hashtag send it in. And it sort of just took off and people started to pick up on it. And, it was a little bit of a community because when I started going to the track, I think one of the ways I got hooked to go to the track, quite frankly, when I was going back to those college days in Lexington, as I was talking to you guys about, this was pre-ADW, pre-cell phone wagering, anything. So everyone was there. It was sort of a camaraderie, and even when I started going to the track, it really taught me a lot to listen to those guys and hear what they had to say and learn a lot about the game. And that sort of is lost at a lot of simulcast outlets, as you guys know these days, because, it's so easy to sit home, whether you've got RTN or on your ADW to watch and bet races. So I thought that at least we had the opportunity online to bring some of that camaraderie back, and all discuss, our bad beats or this or that and, have a good time, have some fun. We always try to keep it on the light side, of course, and, celebrate any nice scores anyone made. So it sort of took me back to the days when I would go to the track and there were a lot of in-person simulcasting. These days that era is, a little bit past us. So I think social media is our opportunity to drive that home.
So now you are one of those guys, and people trust you and your voice when it comes to handicapping, and people are waiting to hear what you have to say. And you're one of the guys that people are waiting to hear from. Like, who am I going to bet? So we want to know what your personal approach is to handicapping a card.
That's a scary thought, Meadow, that they're that dialed into my opinion. Maybe it's they're waiting who to fade when they go up to the windows, but. I'm a big trip guy, guys. I love watching replays. I mean, I've got my Hoosier Park, literally before I went on this thing, I've got my Hoosier Park program for tonight, and I'm literally going back and watching a slew of replays. As many races as we have a week, as many races as I watch, a sick amount a week from all tracks. I like to go back and visually just get those trips. I think program lines can be a little deceptive sometimes. Sometimes they look good, much better than I think they were in person. I like that because those sometimes are horses to bet against. And then sometimes the line doesn't look great, but you go back and realize the horse may have been blocked or didn't get geared up until, very, very late in the mile. So I'm a big trip guy, big visual guy when it comes to handicapping. And, I like to spend at least, an hour and a half a card. If you're going to do it right, it's a lot of work, unfortunately, to go back and watch, a lot of replays, take some notes, because I think if you're going to do anything on air, we owe it to those out there that are, generous enough with their time to spend it with us and wager that, a lot of the guys, they don't have that type of time. People have regular jobs, whatnot going on. So we try to be a little bit the eyes and ears for people that, that are tuning in and maybe not quite as immersed as we are in the business. So, just try to do a lot of homework when it comes to, handicapping the races. Sometimes it pays off. Sometimes it's very frustrating when it does not.
Well, just out of curiosity, how much do you depend on a gut feeling?
At some point in time, it comes down to that because obviously there's some races you have a really strong opinion on. Some races, is as much work as you can possibly do. It still looks like a jigsaw puzzle to you. So I think gut feeling comes into that. I would say even more than a gut feeling. if I'm down between 3, 4 horses in a race, I tend to always try to go to who I think is going to be like the better odds, of that trio. And that's a good feeling in its own, I guess, when it comes down to that. So, there'll be a race or two a night, even here, as much work as you can put into it. I'm scratching my head just as much after I've spent, 20 minutes on the race I was, before. So it's sometimes it's ultimately going to come down to just how you feel.
You've been a huge advocate and, player friendly strategies and creative wagering menus. Can you tell us what you think tracks need to do more of now to keep players engaged?
Well, I think obviously, the one thing that I've always tried to do is be there to listen, to our customers. Those are the most important people to listen to, right? And kind of, take some credence to what they have to say and insight. And sometimes I think people think it's tough to take criticism. I don't. In fact, it's there's a difference between criticism and somebody just getting really mad after a race and blowing off steam with you for a little bit. But I think as long as it's constructive, we always try to listen to that. I think our pricing is very important. We've always tried to do a little bit as much as we can. For horse players out there, to have some very player friendly takeouts. That's a tightrope to walk. Again, another thing behind the scenes that I lowered some of the takeouts at Hoosier this year. And really, you start to hurt the margins of some of your partners out there in the ADW world. They don't like that too much when those takeouts become lower and their margins are cut, even though it's very well good for the player. And I would argue that it's going to increase handle. I would argue that it's going to help the player win long term, of course. And I would stand very firm in those arguments. But even lowering a couple of the takeouts this year at Hoosier to some of the more player friendly 12 and 15%. I had a couple of battles on my hand with companies to try and push that through. They weren't too happy that we were going a little more on the player friendly side. But I think in the long run, if we're going to be a game, pricing is one of the most important things. We've got extreme competition these days with sports betting and everything else, and we just can't be the archaic old time pricing model. I mean, tracks, years ago, the grandstands were full and the takeouts were 25 or 30%, and they were having just a big time with it. It's a different world these days, and if we don't catch up and get with it to some degree, we're going to be left behind.
Totally agree with that.
I'm glad you brought that up because that kind of leads into my next question. From your perspective, how do you think that we should approach modernizing the sport, but keeping its old soul and history that it has?
Well, I think that technology is key, as you guys know. That's another thing we're just going to be left behind. A lot of people talk about the time it takes us to put on race cars, which I agree. I don't know if there's something we can do to package a couple tracks, maybe where you have a race going off every 8-9 minutes. That was probably a question for someone smarter than me. It's just very tough. As you guys know, when you put in mutuals and say even in qualifiers, I mean, we're going off every 15, 16 minutes, and that's, going as fast as we can possibly go. And then, you take into account your mutuals and, having to run the race, go official and whatnot. So, you're talking about it gets to a point where it's 18, 19 minutes, no matter what you do when it comes to warming up horses. Just don't think we have the ability to go a whole lot faster on an individual basis at the tracks. Some probably would accuse me of going a little longer than necessary, but I think that speeding up is going to be tough for a track solely on its own. But I just think more technology. The difference between horse racing and sports betting. If I want to get on tonight and I can't parlay baseball; it's the All-Star break. But if I want to get on tonight and swing with anything going on, I have all this data at my hands. It's at my fingertips, and it's free. I can look up anything from every stat in the world I want to know. I can look up to see what the betting public is doing themselves as far as the percentage of the money on each side or each team. And we just don't have anything that easy to access. I've had guys that are, professional sports bettors reach out to me and really, where can I get this data? We try to do some things with free programs, by the way, which are not free to the tracks. We have to pay for that, the ability to put those programs up, as you guys know very well. I know as well.
We do it. Wager Warriors.
Yes. So good work, though. I appreciate your contribution in that matter, too. So I think data is key. It's just unfortunate that that's the only thing we can provide because a lot of guys like to go, data is everything these days. In the sports betting world, it's literally everything. So, if we could ever come up with a pathway type system or whatnot for, people really to look up all of the stats at their fingertips, I think, it's absurd. Live video. Yeah, you can get them the ADWs, but there's so many. We have a lot of hoops for people to jump through if they really wanted to get immersed in our business and get the data and make a bet. So I think that if we can find a way to work through that and just make things easier, and it's very difficult with all the companies involved, as you guys know, I would love to just put all this stuff on my website, but I'd have about 3 cease and desist letters within 25 minutes. So if we've got to find a way to put things in people's fingertips out there and just make it easy for them, because quite frankly, it's a little more difficult on our side of the aisle right now.
I totally agree with you. As you've already said, Gabe, you've helped lower takeout rates at tracks like at Pompano and Red Mile. And you've also brought new wagering types to the table there. What is one wager right now you think is underutilized and really needs a glow up?
It's a good question. I think here's part of the problem. I think that sometimes as a sport as a whole, particularly on the harness side, when because essentially you have X amount of dollars a race that's going to be bet at whatever track you have. So I think one of the tendencies that tracks have a little bit too much is sometimes we dilute that menu a little too much. We're offering too many wagers, so to speak. So the money's spread out to a point where each particular pool, you don't have enough liquidity as a player to really want to play into those pools. Where I think the one strategy we took at Pompano early on, because that was the track that, we were a little light when it came to the race per race betting. So we tried to really cut back the menu that we were offering, and not over dilute it to get in and spread the money. We had one pick 4, we had one pick 5, we had one super high 5, and one later that was a jackpot. We didn't want to saturate the menu, so to speak, because we really wanted to drive all the action into, one or two particular pools a night. So I don't know what's underutilized. I do think tracks sometimes overutilize pools that, and it's, if you look at the handle and some of these pools, with rolling pick 3s or whatever it may be. If we did that at Hoosier Park tonight, and we'll probably bet close to $1 million. But if we did that, the pools would be like $900, $2,000. It's just, it's just diluting other pools. But I think the multi-race pools, really, if you talk about something to hone in on, and I think there's something on social media and whatnot with the guarantees that you can really drive. So I think, if a track's out there and we're trying to, get a little bit of a following and a customer base, I really think that our pick 4 Pompano was the driving force, and then it just sort of, a rising tide brings up all ships, or whatever they say. So once we started getting a lot of steam on the pick 4, at the 12% takeout, and it was sort of a staple, a nightly staple. We started to raise the guarantees. I think we started at 2,500. By the end of it, we were doing 50,000 a night in those pools. So that brought a lot of eyes and a lot of attention to our product. It sort of helped brand us as a very player-friendly track, I think, and I think overall it just brought a lot of eyes to our track, and it really helped us from top to bottom at the end of the day. And that was just really seeking out one wager, branding it, making it very player-friendly, a type of bet. And occasionally we'd have a carryover that really would bring a lot of eyes to the product. So I think that just trying to hone in maybe on a specific wager or two is a lot better strategy than trying to just, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
So I would argue that both thoroughbred and harness racing, more so harness racing, struggles to keep casual players and bettors engaged beyond the big days. So what would you say the key is to keep bettors there instead of being a once a year kind of player into a weekly regular?
Well, I think a lot of the things I was talking about earlier, Meadow, with the we try to, again, be the eyes and ears for folks out there that may not have the time to put into it. In Hoosier, we've really revamped and changed the entire show. Whoever's on at night, we've used an arsenal of TV talent here. We're very fortunate to have on a roster with Emily Radcliffe still being close by. We've got Hollywood Hayden. We get really desperate myself. Jacob Reinheimer's on a nightly basis. And, we really have tried to use just a whole host of folks out there with different opinions. But I think just keeping people engaged, with that. We go through, race by race. We chat. We analyze every race. We discuss, different situations, how the race sets up for the trip. We come back on after the race and analyze, what we've just, taken a look at. I think that that, does help. I think that, it may help folks out there that may not be as immersed in the business as we all are to understand, how a race takes place, what happened. Hey, that horse didn't win at 3 to 5, but why? Let's go a little deeper. I mean, a casual fan may say, well, geez, he set 7th the whole race and, never made any improvement, but what was it? Was it a slow early half? Did the horse have trouble getting in? Was his cover dead? We all know there's a million things that can go on wrong in a race when we play a horse. So we try to, it's almost to some degree, maybe to a more casual fan, a little educational. We hope to kind of learn how our sport works, which, as we know, is a little bit different than many. But so many out there, sometimes I'll see different things that are put out online or on social media, even from people who watch the game quite a bit, sometimes it just, oh, geez, this guy, wasn't in the right spot, or he didn't try this horse, or, all this stuff. And it's really, it couldn't be further from the truth. And in most instances, there's usually a very rational explanation of what took place. So we try to, just go through a lot of those scenarios and whatnot, and hopefully, over the course of time, build our fan base up a little bit that start to enjoy it and start to, feel a little more confident. Because the only way we're going to get people to invest more in our game, whether it's, on the gambling side or anything else, they have to really feel confident that they know the game, they know what they're watching. And I think the more confident we can try to make them feel with doing some of those things, the more they're going to be willing to step up and hang in with us.
So speaking of social media and your tweets and pics, you've always had a lot of fun with them, even when you're cold. How important is transparency and personality when it comes to engaging with horse players?
I think that, everyone out there, look, I'm one of them, so I can say it, but all of us out there, we want to relate to someone that's, that's a little more, I guess you could say, one of us, so to speak. It's just, I think you go a long way with that, as opposed to just, towing the company line, whatever it may do. I mean, geez, we started out with some stuff that I probably wouldn't even do these days with some of the things that early on at Pompano. But I think you just have to be real. I think, whether people think I'm an idiot or want to follow anything that I ever say or do, is most people, I think, would agree that, I'm probably one of them. That's even if you don't care for my opinion out there very much. So I think that just goes a long way in trying to be authentic with people. And I think it means a lot. It's just it's a way to do it. I've always tried to go. Part of that, you really can't do it through sometimes a corporate platform. So, I've always really honed in on my personal account, for that reason, that I can do things like that. We try to keep it fun and interesting. I mean, we had a great following at Pompano just from the stuff that would go wrong every night, guys. We had power outages, the starting gates would break, this, that, and the other. And I mean, it sort of, all that would do nothing but garner attention. I mean, I think one of the tweets that I sent, probably, I'm not a data collector on my Twitter account, but I think one of the ones that was the most viral, or whatever, Meadow, you can tell me what they call it these days. Viral sounds right to me.
That's right. That's a good word.
Gotcha. We had a horse that won a Pompano one night that would not leave the track. I don't know if you guys remember that, but his name was Command the Fire. And really, the entire industry just took off on this guy. It was for a week, just went wild. So we had him back in the next week. And he literally caused us about a 20-minute delay because he would not literally leave the track. Every time he started getting close to the draw gate, he would just speed up that much faster. Aaron Byram was driving him and just really went on a ride for a while. He won the race, would not go to the winner's circle, and just would not stop, even going the wrong way on the track. So he finally tired out a little bit. We got him off, but I tweeted that video, and it got, just took off with even a casual fan. And those are the type of things you're trying to capture. I mean, I tweet out about a carryover. Those are my people, of course, the guys that are out there in the weeds every night with us and want to jump in and get some action. But you really look for things, and you guys do a great job with it too, that are going to take off with more of a general public and just draw new eyes to the sport as well. So something like that video, it took off for a week, and the question we kept getting asked is, when is this horse back in? When is this horse going to race? So it built up to the next week. Well, by the way, we put him in the last race just in case he wouldn't leave again. We didn't want to cost ourselves another half-hour delay with the rest of the card. Unfortunately, he was just a little bit of an anxious horse. He had to be scratched and went on to a different track and a future away from Pompano. But it just goes to show you that the craziest things can take off a little bit, and some of the things you would least expect. So I think that anything that we're doing to draw a new audience, I mean, there are a lot of people out there that do a great job with it, and a lot better job than I do with it. I can tell you that. Chris Gooden, as you guys know, at the Meadows is fantastic. I mean, he's produced content that goes a long way. You guys yourselves have produced great content. I think that is unique and appeals to a much larger audience. Jessica Hallett is great. I know she's learned a lot from Chris as well there up at Saratoga, but she puts out some great content. So I think that anything we put out, we've got to get away from the standard, so-and-so won the fourth race today and paid $4.20. that's going to appeal to virtually zero. I think we've got to get a lot more into the business of with all these different avenues these days. And you guys know a lot more than I do. I'm not a TikToker or anything like that. Twitter's about as far as I get to go with it. But we have so many different avenues to spread our wonderful sport out there, hopefully to a new audience and for literally no cost.
Well, I think we need to get you on a TikTok when you come out for Adios next week.
You know what? So many people have told me to do that or Instagram or anything, and it's I just waste so much time on Twitter already. I don't trust myself. If I get something else, it's going to be another hour or something a day that I waste. So it's already bad enough on Twitter. I don't know if I need another addiction.
It is easy to get hooked on TikTok. It's like a drug, honestly. But I was going to say that I know what you're saying, because some of our most popular things are just us being authentic. And I think that fans want reality and authenticity, and they want to see it as if they were there and what's going on. I don't really think they want, the cookie cutter, like you said, so-and-so won the fourth race. Here's how much it paid. Like, here's the horse that won the fourth race. Here's him after the race in the paddock. This is what he looks like. That's what people want to see. So I completely understand what you're saying. And I think that there's a lot of people in the industry that do a good job with showcasing things behind the scenes. And I think that's what really grows the popularity. But I wanted to ask you, if someone's new to horse racing and new to betting horses, what would you recommend their starter strategy to be, or how should they go into betting?
Honestly, I think that the best way to go is if you know someone that's in the game to really, to take hold of them and learn what you can, soak up everything you can out there. There are different spots you can go. Harnessracing.com now, I think, is the old Harness Racing fan zone. Lots, slew of information there on the harness side. There's some books, a lot related to the thoroughbred side, but if gambling is really the avenue you want to go, as far as some of the stuff put out, that's a quick Google search away. But it's tough. We've got a game that's a little bit, imposing to people that are newcomers. At my grandmother has an opinion on the World Series. It's very easy. Who's going to win? A football game, basketball game. It's easy to form an opinion and send it in. Once you do, on our side, you feel like you're up against it so much at a challenge. We give them a program that, is great, has a lot of information, but to them it looks like hieroglyphics, and it's tough to really get someone, a newcomer, true newcomer, involved. But it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. That's why we try to do a lot, at least on our broadcast, to really analyze and I think if you tuned in, people would learn a little bit just from watching, a few races here and there. Because that's the challenge we're looking to overcome, is to take some of that stigma away of how tough racing is. And no one wants to bet on something where they feel like they're just up against it, right? If they think, geez, this is too tough, or I don't know enough about this to really have a strong opinion. But on the flip side of that, the one thing I'll say is a lot of us degenerates like myself who started off early, we started at a young age, and we started as casually as anyone. We're walking into the track and, betting $5 on this or that. And then, fast forward to now, we're a little bit out of control. We bet a lot more and we bet a lot larger amount. We feel like we know what we're doing at this point. So I don't think it's ever a situation where we shouldn't try to take on new customers, and everyone's going to start off as a small bettor. Everyone's going to start off as a novice. But thankfully, some of those folks get converted into a long-term patronage, and that's what we're looking for. And I think, pricing helps to, help keep people in business, not rob them, so to speak, with these, old school larcenous takeouts. So I think just a little bit of everything. But, I think the biggest hurdle for us to overcome with newcomers is just how intimidating it can be to walk into a racetrack, which is a little place you're very uncomfortable, as opposed to like sports wagering.
Well, if you walk into the simulcast room at any racetrack and you bring snacks, I promise you, there is someone there that will teach you how to read a program for some homemade cookies and brownies. I've done it. And that's how I learned.
Find someone that's having a good day and not losing every ticket on tilt already. Find someone that's in a good mood. That can be tough to do sometimes too.
Exactly. Well, usually brownies and cookies put the older gentlemen that have sugar deprivation a little happier.
You can, I'm sure if they brought them to Hoosier, I would be of assistance, great assistance.
That's right. Oatmeal cookies by the crowd. So, with all the talk about fixed odds wagering, sports betting crossovers, and exchange wagering, do you think that harness racing will ever adopt this sports book like wagering menu?
Very difficult. I mean, one thing. Let's address the elephant in the room. The problem is people wager, and then these prices sometimes just get pounded late. I saw a horse I think last night that was even money, and quite frankly, I thought tons the best, and even money I thought was not a bad price in the horse. But by the time they hit the first turn, the thing is 1-5, and that's a pretty filthy feeling as a gambler when they're 10 steps into the first turn, and now you feel like you can't win regardless because even if the horse wins, you got no price. You got nothing that you thought you were going to get. So therein lies the problem. Now, a lot of that has to do with some of the CAW, computer assisted wagering. Some tracks have put in protocols on that. Fixed odds wagering, extremely difficult. We've seen the thoroughbreds tiptoe in it. Monmouth Park, for instance. First of all, you have to have someone extremely sharp to make those odds, or someone's going to absolutely burn you, when on some of these prices. So, you have to really have somebody that's extremely sharp. And I would say, only a handful of people, if I was starting to call someone to be on my team when it came to that capacity. So it's a difficult foray. I know they've had, limited success with it, we'll say, a little bit different than pari-mutuel. The other thing is, on the harness side, there's only so many dollars in our ecosystem. So if you go out and you try and venture off to like a fixed odds, a different path, so to speak, you start to dilute that money again, as I talked about earlier, and it takes out some money maybe from your pari-mutuel pools, which affects all of us in the game and some of the pools. So I just don't know. I think at least the starting point for that, if we're going to go down that road, would likely be the major thoroughbred tracks. If they come up with a successful blueprint and sort of work through the kinks, the rest of us are obviously going to be watching very, very closely because, we do have a problem right now with some of these odds fluctuations. And by the way, they're not all bad. I mean, there are a couple times I saw a horse last night. This is my best bet of the night. Actually won, guys. So let's mark this date down on your calendars. But this horse was 2-1 for a long time. Left the gate last night and got off 7-2. So I got nearly double the price. So it's not all bad. Believe me, if someone drops, someone else has to go up. It's mathematics at some point. But really, optically, it just looks bad to our customer, when you get that situation where a horse gets, hit late and then, leaves the gate and goes out and they see their price just completely collapse on that opening turn. It's happened to me too many times to count. And there's just no more frustrating feeling. So I sympathize with the guys out there that, like to get a little loud when that happens.
Well, we have one last question before we throw you in the hot seat. You've been to almost every track, if not all of them. What is your favorite Pennsylvania track, both harness and thoroughbred?
I've probably got to stand out on both sides, guys, because I love the Meadows on the harness side. That's I was fortunate enough 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know that contacted by the Horsemen's group there, the MSOA, and got to be a part of Adios Day. Maybe it's because I'm there on the greatest day of the year, but it's really cool. I love to come out on the Friday night racing is cool up there. They do so many different events, and I tell everyone that Adios Day is one of my favorite days of the year. It's just so cool to see everyone out there in their purple and enjoying the day. Love the fact that we got to move over in the kind of the stand side, to be a part a little bit more of the atmosphere the last couple of years. So I just really like that track. I like the setup. The hotel's attached to the track. You've got the sports book right there. You can overlook some of the races. So for me as a gambler and a fan first, it's just a cool setup. I really enjoy the setup there at the Meadows and the racing and that circuit and the people there too. Just a great group. I think top to bottom, I've really enjoyed to go there. And on the thoroughbreds, I've gotten my dose at Parks. I love Parks, guys. That's such a fun track for me. I get to, I've gotten to go up and fill in for Jess, who I know you guys are friends with and know very well. She's fantastic. The track is just really cool. I enjoy the circuit. It's sort of a guilty pleasure early in the week, with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday action. I'm a poker player. It's another shocker here as well. And they have one of probably the best poker rooms I've ever been in at Parks. So, I always stay really close to the track. And anytime I go up to fill in for Jess, I treat it as a little bit of a poker vacation. So I've got my daytime activities over there to announce the races. And I hit the poker room when they're done. But really have enjoyed going up there quite a bit as well. So those are definitely my top two.
Man, last year though, you were on trackside doing audios. It was a scorcher. I gave you my little neck air conditioner. I
Which
was like,
helped.
poor Gabe and Donnell were getting pounded by the sun.
Yes, it was tough. Yeah, it is tough. But just, again, that atmosphere is so cool at Adios Day. You get immersed in that. I think they're going to get a good field this year. I'm really excited to see the eliminations come out. I think it's going to be, one of the best 3-year-old races, at least at this point in the season, if everyone we anticipate enters in the race. So, I think it could just be a huge day and a lot of fun, as it always is.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm super excited. Well, we're throwing you in the hot seat. This is what we like to do on Hot to Trot. We like to ask you the non-horse racing questions that we are dying to know. And I know you are on the road a lot, so this should be a pretty easy one to start off with. What is your go-to favorite fast food restaurant order?
Ooh, I don't do a lot of fast food. Jimmy John's is a fast food place I like, but anytime I'm in the area of a P.F. Chang's, I'm a P.F. Chang's fan. So I don't know if that's quite fast food. Kind of tastes like it, even though it takes a minute longer. That's one of my favorite spots to go as well.
What do you usually order at P.F. Chang's?
Oh, it's an absolute dead heat between the Chang's chicken and the Mongolian beef. I sort of go back and forth with those two.
I like Mongolian beef, so.
All right, next question. This does not have to be horse racing related, but it can be. Do you have any superstitions?
Not really. I mean, I'm like one of those old school guys at the track. I don't like $50 bills. Whether if I'm at a casino or a track, don't be trying to cash me out with 50s, or if I'm at the bank, I've sent them back across the counter. So yeah, I guess that would be one superstition. That's pretty common amongst gamblers. I don't know why that started, but how many times have I taken a bad beat and then I take out my money at night and find a 50 in my pocket? It just seems to be too closely related. That would clearly be mine.
I didn't know that was a superstition. What is it? You just $50 bill brings bad luck?
They're just bad luck. They're bad luck. We don't want them. You give us, give us 20s, give us hundreds. They just cause you misery. I found over time. That said, if somebody, dropped me off a stack of them, I'd probably still take it. I'd take my shot with them. But overall, no 50s for gamblers. That's a bad thing. I learned that as a teller, guys. When I was my first job in horse racing, was 18 or 19. I didn't know that either, Meadow. And I learned that, when I was in a teller window, and I would give 50s, routinely. At that point, it was a much more cash business because I'm old than it is even now. But anytime I would pass 50s, at least half the time they'd say, no, and send it back across the counter. So I started saying, geez, and then I started to realize the same at some point, and I went down the same path. I'm one of the grumpy old guys now that has the same opinion.
That's interesting. I didn't know that either. So, would you rather give up air conditioning for the rest of your life or the internet for the rest of your life?
Oof. Boy, that's tough. As a guy that I am on my phone quite a bit there to toy around, I think I would probably, as bad as it hurts me to say this, I think I'd probably give up the air conditioning. I think I need the internet these days.
I do too.
Yeah, same. If you were a dog, which breed would you be or want to be?
Wow. Well, which breed would I be? Very loyal companion here. So let's see. I grew up with German Shepherds, so I think they're kind of cool dogs. That's one of my favorite breeds. I want to get a dog, but I'm on the road too much right now. I need to. I've got full tilt action now. Sundays and Mondays in Lexington, and Tuesday through Saturdays in Hoosier, and then all over some places in between. So I'm just on the road too much. But geez, that's the one thing. If there's one thing I want to do as soon as I can possibly do it, it's get a dog.
Oh, I have 3. You can have one of mine.
There you go. I'll take over custody at the Adios.
All right. You can have Bruno, the Shih Tzu.
Oh, sounds great.
All right. So last question. What is the last thing you purchased on Amazon? Because it was just Amazon Prime Week, and I bought a lot. I want to know what you bought.
I'm going to reveal how old I am or how old school I am. I'm a guy, I write checks. I still have cash for all my purchases. Hate places that won't take cash, by the way. Drives me nuts. I don't even have an Amazon account. I've never bought anything on Amazon. I'll tell you the only thing, I guess the closest thing that I can come to Amazon is GoPuff. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or have it there. It's sort of the online, you can order groceries essentially to your place. Every now and then I'll get some Gatorade, some water, maybe a beer or two off GoPuff, but that's about as close as I get. That's really the only online ordering. I'm as old school as it gets. Someone has to bring me up to speed here in today's world.
Wow.
Yeah, you need to partake in some Amazon Prime days. Like, there's some good deals.
My neighbors, by the way, my building, I'm in a building here in downtown Indianapolis, and every single day I walk through the hallway. I'm the only person, by the way, that must not get Amazon because these people are crazy. I mean, every day I walk through the hallway, I have to fade like 50 packages all over the place. So apparently I'm the only guy that, that doesn't use Amazon, I will say.
Well, that is very interesting to know. I still like to, that you keep it old school. You're truthful about it. Very transparent, Gabe. We love it. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Hot to Trot. It has been a pleasure, and we love to see your tweets. So tweet us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Gabe.
All right, guys. Ashley Meadows, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. See you next week at the Adios.
See you there.
Sounds good. We'll see you there.
Hey, guys. Thanks.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to the Standardbred Breeders of Pennsylvania for sponsoring Hot to Trot. We'll see you next time.